Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 3, Episode 3, Apparently Dead. Now, this episode, I would say, is kind of a prime example of pretty much everything that always goes wrong when it comes to Ash and just kind of general human interaction with people who aren't 100% familiar with deadites. He goes in, it's like, alright, well, I'm gonna go see my super brief ex-wife, and he finds out that, as far as the viewing and everything goes, it's supposed to be fine for everyone because they reattached her head, which of course is basically like just prime, evil body, takeover opportunity. So he freaks out, and of course he goes, and he's like, okay, everything's cool. He pokes her arm a little bit, and is like, right when he's about to say, I'm assuming, of all the chicks she gave the best blowjobs, he sees that her body disappeared. And it's like, okay, well, this is where things get crazy. Chops her head off. It was definitely gross because it's like not only was he dealing with the deadite and it's like the blood of it, it's the embalming aspect of it. So it's like orange and stuff because of all the fluids within her body. But I love the way they did that opening where it's like he has to deal with his super brief ex-wife. He's fighting basically inside inside the casket this entire time. So it's just really interesting watching that, and then like her using the picture and she breaks through like using her tongue, and I was like, oh, that's really crazy. And he like slices the tongue off by tearing the picture away, and then they're fighting and she's like biting his hand and stuff, and he basically rips her whole jaw off. And then of course he has to pop her head off, so he uses the glass shards and has to like cut the stitches in her neck to pop her head off. And I was like, that was kind of insane. That was really, really nuts. And then he gets knocked out by the casket itself and he passes out, and I was like, okay, well, that was kind of silly, funny way to end it. And I wasn't expecting it to be he got knocked out inside the casket, and then after the the title card, it pops up and the casket is in front of everyone. I was like, oh crap, I just assumed it would be like a sort of a solo thing where Brandy would end up finding him in the casket and she would freak out that way. I didn't think it was going to be he got knocked out and they just assumed he took off. And then while she's up there, she's crying and stuff and reading this note, he's shaking around and rumbling inside the casket, and he pops out, her head drops out and everything. It's just gross, and he just picks it up and is like, sorry, and just tosses it back in there. It's like, man, the whole episode was him having these terrible situations in front of his daughter. And then of course we find out that Ruby is there, which there was a line in here that really caught me off guard. So I was like, okay, that's super confusing because I wasn't expecting this. But Brandy mentions that she's known Ruby for 2 years as like her assistant, or not assistant, but like the vice principal or whatever she is. I forgot what she said. But I was like, so either that means that this season is 2 years after the last season, or what I think is a lot more likely is that Ruby somehow kind of put a spell on Brandy or something like that to make her think that it's the same person when it's not. But that also doesn't make a ton of sense because we've never seen that happen before. And if that's the case, you think it would, they would do it to other far more important characters than Brandy, who they may or may not have known was Ash's actual daughter. So it's one of those weird things where it's like, I don't know why, Ruby was even a part of the school, like in general, like what element was there. And then it ends up being like, oh, this has been, for 2 years. So I was like, all right, well, I don't know exactly what that means. It definitely made it confusing to me because I was like, okay, well, like I said, either it's been 2 years since the last season, which wouldn't make a ton of sense. Like it took Ash 2 years to open up like this little, like admittedly like a tiny crappy little store. It's like, I don't think that was really the case. I don't think it took 2 years for all that stuff to happen because they don't talk about that otherwise as far as like it's been 2 years or, they did a big time skip, which would totally work because, with it being the third season, technically it's 3 years of them filming. So the actors are 3 years older than the characters would be. So it was like, that totally makes sense just to kind of keep the age of the characters the same as the actors. But they don't talk about that. It was not like, with Pablo and Kelly, it wasn't like she'd been gone. It's like, we haven't seen you for 2 years, or we've seen you like 5 times in 2 years. None of that has come up. So it was super weird to me that they referenced that it had been 2 years. So I don't know what the deal is with that. I was like, okay, that was very confusing to me. So I don't really know what that means, but definitely wanted to talk about that. I don't know if you guys caught that or not, but I was like, that's weird. 2 years doesn't make a lot of sense pretty much in any way, shape, or form. Like, it's not like she time traveled after, being brought to the present. So I don't know, just thought that was weird and I wanted to mention it. But other than that, definitely a cool episode. I like what they did as far as Ash just kind of screwing up the whole way through. Ruby, of course, brings his dad back, so that's how he comes. And it started off where it was like, okay, he's brought back to life, but what's the plan here? And of course, it was that he was meant to be evil, and naturally, Ash ends up killing him, and of course, Brandy got knocked out, so she missed all the dialogue where it's like, oh, her grandfather was brought back to life, and he's evil now, and Ruby was the one that did it, and she missed all of that to wake up to Ash basically just splitting him down the middle, and it was like, well, that sucks. That's like all of her experience has just been, your mom just got killed. I just slammed this harp on your buddy. Sorry, I like redecapitated your mom and tore her jaw off after she was dead, and now I'm killing your grandfather that you didn't really know existed. Just a whole bunch of issues. So of course she's just sprayed in blood, and Ash is like, got you, and then he's like, oh, I can totally explain this, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to her, which seems super weird to me at this point. I would think that she'd kind of at least attempt to understand it. Like, I know it's brand new, but even that very first experience should have been something to her. Like, they were fighting like flying, trumpets and weapons and stuff. Like, that's a little weird. Like, there should be something where it's like, maybe in some way, shape, or form, I'll listen to you. Granted, it's a little hard to say, my grandfather was dead and stuff like that, but I don't know. Like, after that very first experience, I wouldn't be questioning him as much as she is. I wouldn't be doing it, as intensely. But, the show has to have that bit of tension where he loses his daughter, and then eventually, of course, he's going to win her back and, prove to her that Ruby's the bad guy and, all that extra stuff. But excited for the next episode for sure. I think that's when Ash's dad is officially a ghost in the next episode. I have no idea what they're doing with Dalton's character. Apparently he's dead, but maybe not 100%. I was curious if that was even really him, because it was like, they end up being attacked after they find the blade. So it's like, all right, they got the blade, they're getting attacked by like, the spirit or whatever. And so he's carried off. Pablo, Kelly, and Dalton, they all kind of get separated. So Kelly ends up finding the dude, and he's like, Pablo did this, like, we should have killed him. And then of course he turns into a deadite. And I was like, okay, was that ever really him? But typically, they do have to use someone's actual body to kind of pop up. So it's just like, that's interesting. It was like, I just don't really know what to expect. And I was once again surprised. But they did kill off Candace in the very first episode. And I thought both of them were going to be way more important characters. So she died in the beginning, and he only died, 3 episodes in. I was like, okay, that kind of changed up what I was expecting for both those characters. So I would assume he's actually gone. I mean, he was like totally impaled. They're not saving that guy, but it could have just been fake. But I don't think it was. I think that was really his body, as like I said, it normally has to be. So he's out. Like, he's gone. Pablo kind of runs him over, and then things seem to be going even crazier in the next episode, where Dalton technically is still being taken over by the deadites. We don't really know what's going to end up happening with Pablo, because I assume that they're going to go a little bit back to what they did before, with the deadites kind of trying to pull him back and regain control over him, and the Necronomicon and the tattoos and everything. The vision is what led him to the blade, which I thought was a really funny scene, where he's like, so what's your name? Maybe we can go get coffee, stupid stuff like that. But the visions of this woman that's been sent by his uncle, that's kind of helping him defeat the evil. But it's almost like he's got these basically these two halves, which I'm kind of excited to see how they play that, because I mentioned before, it's already pretty interesting with this storyline basically being exactly what it was before, with him being taken over and controlled by the Necronomicon. But now he's, they've gone through that experience one time, so how are they going to make it different the second time around? So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And now we have the stuff with, the visions from his uncle, this woman sent by his uncle. So it's like, those two halves kind of within him a little bit. I'm excited to see, what they end up doing with Pablo, but the whole next episode seems like it'll be entertaining. For sure it should be crazy. I don't know if how long it's gonna take before Brandy realizes that Ruby is the villain, but I'm looking forward to that. We didn't see anything with the baby. We do see Ruby in this episode quite a bit, mostly, dealing with Brandy, but we don't see what's going on with the baby, and, how that's gonna end up playing out, and, how far along the baby has actually come after eating like those 2 random hitchhikers and stuff. So hopefully we get some answers on that in the next episode. But all in all, another really insane episode. Ash totally screwing up in front of his daughter, his dad kind of coming back to life, and now he's going to officially be a ghost in the next episode, which seems to be focusing on opening up an actual portal. So I don't know how big that's going to get, but that seems fairly important to me. So definitely looking forward to the next one. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it, and I would love to know how you guys think things are gonna actually end up playing out with Brandy. Like how long you think it'll take before she realizes that Ruby is the villain. What do you think is going to be that defining moment that finally helps her realize it? Because I feel like it might be something small that happens, just from storytelling, just watching TV. Typically, it's like it's either going to be like the really big thing, or it's like a small thing makes her question it, and then it's like, let me start, spying on Ruby and seeing what's really going on. So I feel like that's what's going to happen first. It would be that slow build up for her character while all the craziness is going on right around her. She's still like slowly building up. She finally got that first clue that probably, won't involve Ash, and it'll be like, that was really weird. Maybe I'll start looking into, some of this other stuff, which she kind of already had it a little bit, with her grandfather. But she also didn't know that he was like, I guess in the hospital was the lie that he told her and stuff. But I don't know. I would love to know your predictions on how she's finally gonna learn exactly what's going on. And of course, definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.